Hello, friends. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
Me saying, The Most High hath made this world for many, but the world to come for few. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us. Joined again by my good friend and co-host Rob Skiba as we continue our introspection on the parallel accounts of the Genesis Revisited series. Rob, are you there, brother?
I am here, Zen. How are you?
Pretty good, man. How's life been? And any word from any other of the different film festivals that are going on?
Yeah, they just had one just a few days ago. I haven't got the results back yet. I think they'll do final judging and announce the winners on the 8th. So a couple more days, I guess, on that. And otherwise, just been working really hard to get my presentations done. They're done now. I'm just kind of in the process of hacking them down to try to keep it within a 2-hour time slot for the Take on the World conference that's
Sweet.
coming up. But,
yeah, that's on in the 19th, is it?
Yeah, 19 through 22.
Nice.
Yeah.
And what are the three that you're presenting on again?
So the first two, well, at least the first one's going to be very different than for what people are used to me talking about typically. Mm-hmm. I'm used to, people are used to hearing me talk about the Nephilim or Nimrod or, government conspiracies or flat earth or whatever, Ephraim Awakening type stuff, Yehoah Triangle. But with all that we've all been through over the last 2 years, especially, I just felt like there's a real need to address pain that a lot of people are emotional pain primarily, right? Dealing with anger, fear, sadness type of root problems. So the first one's get on the road to freedom kind of thing through emotional healing, and then the second one is a complete redo of my Why We Need to Be Culturally Relevant lecture, which I was just looking at. The first time I ever did it was the first presentation I ever gave on the public stage. Was that right after I left my ministry, and we got a small video production studio, and I opened it up to the public and did that presentation. It's quite a bit different from that one, but it's 11 years almost to the day that I'll be giving it. So that's kind of. But really dealing with how media works, media manipulation, and how we absolutely have to be doing something on our part to occupy the mountains. I don't know how familiar you are with the Seven Mountain Prophecy. You familiar with that?
No.
The Francis Schaeffer is a pretty well-known theologian in evangelical circles, and Bill Bright, I think he's what is he, Campus Crusade for Christ, I think, and Lauren Cunningham is, I believe, Youth with a Mission. These three men had each been separately given different components that they believed that God was showing them on how to be more effective at reaching the world. And they got together one day and were talking, and as they began to share with one another what they felt that Yahuwah had been showing them, they realized they had each been given separate components of a bigger vision, which when all combined morphed into what they call the Seven Mountain Prophecy. And what another way of looking at the mountains would be spheres of influence. So they identify like religion, government, family, education, media, arts and entertainment, business, and government as the mind molders of society, if you will. And their premise is, if we as believers can occupy these mountains of influence, then we will actually have an impact on our culture. Because right now we're not. I mean, and what I noticed about the Seven Mountain Prophecy, when you look at the seven mountains, the two mountains, one is labeled arts and entertainment as one mountain, and the other is media in general. Those two have an enormous influence on the other five. So it's like like, wow, if we don't occupy these, and I have to take some of the blame myself on the government mountain, because with my Babylon Rising work, I was all about, you can't solve a spiritual problem with the political solution, blah blah blah, your votes don't matter, all our presidents are related, which I still believe that.
Right.
But I believe it was Stalin that said it's not the votes that count, it's who counts the votes that count.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so I am now of the opinion that actually your votes do matter. They really matter, but it's the corruption that nullifies your votes. And I think, regardless what people think about Trump, I think he proved that, with what happened just recently, and shown a light on why your votes didn't matter. Yes, your votes were legitimate. You cast votes and they are counted, but it's who counts the votes and how they count the votes and what votes they're throwing in there from dead people and Mickey Mouse and whatever,
right.
That changed the results. But, I think this last one exposed the corruption in the system.
Right.
Where we go from there, who knows? But at any rate, I see too frequently the attitude that, well, Christians shouldn't be involved with that. And I'm like, if we're not, who do you think's going to be? If we're not getting actively involved at trying to be culturally relevant with any of those mountains, if we're not doing it, I'll tell you, the other side is they're moving forward with an agenda, and they'll tell you that,
Right.
And so anyway, I'm going to really be pounding on that. And actually, Rick Hummer's going to be talking along similar lines. He's speaking before I am about media manipulation and stuff like that. So I haven't seen his presentation, so I don't know exactly what he's doing, but I have a feeling mine will be a good follow-up to his. And then the third one will shift gears into stuff that people are more familiar with me talking about, and probably close out the weekend. Is the Revelation 12 Nuremberg connection, and really starting at 1543 in the Copernicus, when he published his book there, pretty much on his deathbed, and what happened since then, and how the Copernican revolution set the stage for the coming Great Deception. So that'll be stuff that people are more used to hearing me talk about. So
very relevant topics. And I do agree with you. I think that a lot of people over the past year and a half are being forced to face just themselves, and they're prioritizing different things in life and coming to conclusion on what's important, what matters. And really, I mean, we're forced to reconsider everything that we thought was relevant, because there has been a lot of pain and suffering and serious, where people have been challenged in livelihood, or, the people, especially in the restaurant industry and small business, those things have collapsed because of all these shutdowns and all these forced, as far as social distancing and all of that. It's been a real trying time for a lot of people.
Well, it sure has. And I don't know how much you've been seeing about this, but I have been seeing lots of things pointing to actually next Wednesday potentially being a very interesting and possibly volatile day here in this country. I guess there's a big conservative hoo-ha that's going to be taking place, but there's also lots of talks about new requirements and lockdowns, and very huge potential for a false flag, depending on, it's like if the right is getting together to do something, the left's going to be there to sabotage it. And I saw a commentator talking about the January 6th issue, and they're like, if it really was MAGA people, if it really was Trump supporters, if it really was conservatives that did a quote unquote insurrection, the vast majority of these people are gun-toting Second Amendment people. They wouldn't have gone in there with flags. if it was really truly a right-wing vast conspiracy to create an insurrection, that's not the way it would have went down if it was, done by the right. I'm like, yeah, that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
For me, all of it, and the people, the police officers that are committing suicide that were part of the Capitol Police on January 6th, there's like 4 of them, I think, now that have committed suicide, and none of them were suicidal type people.
Right.
They all were family people, and it's like, well, what are they doing? I mean, they're eliminating anybody that could give a contrary narrative to what happened.
Exactly.
And
that is always the modus operandi.
Yeah, and it's amazing to me how many people buy it. I'm like, think, look at this person's most recent, Twitter or Facebook post. Is there anything that he's saying or that their families are saying that would lead you to believe these people were even remotely suicidal? No, they were suicided.
Exactly. It's the same with that Forrestal character that was privy to some of the inner workings of these different CIA experiments with LSD on the soldiers and things like that, and then they threw him out the window, said he committed suicide, and it's always like that, and it's unfortunate for those police officers and their families, and but this I kind of think that this thing happened to Pat Tillman as well when he was in Afghanistan. They shot him twice in the head to shut him up and to keep him quiet when he was going to go public about how they really what was going on in Afghanistan, and that they didn't need to be there, and that they were going after people who weren't even the real enemy. So yeah, that kind of thing happens a lot. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, it is. I did a show last night with Judd Burton, and he was talking. The show was about mythology and the origins of mythology. It was really cool. But during the show, he mentioned something about our troops being trained with like playing cards that had various cuneiform tablets depicted on them, and like instructing them, if you see this, grab it, tag it and bag it, and bring it back. And like, since when is that part of the job description?
Yeah.
What are they doing? And man, I mean, but I want to put something forward here on your show. I'm going to be talking about it on a virtual house church this weekend and moving forward. But it's time for us to mobilize spiritually as believers and just start praying against all this stuff.
I agree.
Because I mean, there's, I hate to say it this way, but it's like, has it come to that? Right? It was like, all we could do now is pray. Oh, really? Is it come to that? Is that all you? But there's not much else we can do. At the moment. But we can pray, and I think we need to be really deliberate and intentional. And a lot of things that we've talked about on this broadcast together, God's promises are conditional, and there's many times that it's an if-then. If you do this, then I will do that.
Right.
And we talk about was it First Chronicles? If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and heal their land. So first we got to turn from our ways, but we need to pray. And my thought is, if we mobilize our audiences and everybody's praying with intent about the same thing at the same time, like if it's 3:00 Central Time, let's say, every day, that we just go to war, spiritually speaking, in prayer. Okay, did you hear that, NSA, CIA, and everybody else, alphabet soup? I'm talking about praying. I'm not talking about insurrection.
Right.
I'm talking about praying and coming against the spiritual wickedness of this world. Because as I was going through my presentation, the culturally relevant one, the beginning of it, I'm like, who runs the world? And the first part, I show sort of the earthling puppet master people that are pulling strings here. But then I go through scripture and show how, both Yeshua and Paul tell you point blank that the god of this world is Satan, and that, as Paul said, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and spiritual wickedness in high places. Well, if that's who we're really supposed to be wrestling against, how many Christians actually are in that fight? Very few. And I'm raising my own hand here. Like I would confess, I'm not like intentionally doing that every day, but when I was looking into the aspects of media, both film art as well as music arts, how many actors and musicians will come right out and tell you that they channel spirits before they do their performances? And it's like, well, that's their form of prayer. They're tapping into the dark side. Right. How much more should we be doing it on the good side?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that people don't realize the power of prayer and focus, intent, and coming together in two or three in His name. And so, yeah, I think that, especially now that we're to this point where there's so few platforms, and even those, like, even what we're doing here, and what we've been doing in other places, we're fortunate to have survived this long, because so many have been completely shut down, and their life's work, or what their life work on, certain platforms and channels, has been completely eradicated. They've been disappeared, and so, yeah, I think we should definitely do that, and it certainly does not hurt, and to mobilize and to get people to do this kind of thing. I think it could have a powerful effect.
Well, there was a time when we were going through the Torah portions, and we would come up on the one on Pinchas, who, and that couple was getting together and having sex at the tent of meeting, and he went out, got the javelin, and put it right through them both. Right. I mean, he is hailed as a man of who had expressed righteous indignation and actually enacted the will of God, doing what he did. And we were going through that portion one time a number of years ago, right after I had just gotten back from Washington, D.C. And, I was feeling this righteous indignation about all the pagan gods that are all over our nation capital, and cult and everything. And I'm just like, Argh! And this older woman that was sitting next to me at the table, she's like, no, we need to pray. I'm like, yeah. No, she's like, I'm serious. We need to pray against the principalities and powers that you just described that are ruling our country in Washington, D.C. And so, okay, yeah. So our whole group, there's probably 30 of us or so, we prayed with intent against the pagan gods that are all over our nation's capital. And it was the next day that all the news reports were talking about the earthquake there in D.C. that cracked and kind of tilted the Washington Monument a little bit. And like, everybody was on Facebook. Rob, did you? It was like freaking out. Everybody that was at that table, that knows what we prayed. That was the next day, and we I don't know why we didn't continue. We should have just continued praying, because I just had this vision of like this heavenly linebacker slamming into it. Boom, this arcade running into it. I'm like, well, maybe we need to just keep going. I mean, look what happened when the saints prayed for Peter to be released from prison, right? Earthquake still shows up, and Peter's let out. And they're still praying
at their door.
He's knocked on the door, and they don't believe it's him. No, he's in prison. We're praying for him. He's like, here, But
absolutely,
I believe in that. And I did you ever read This Present Darkness by Frank Peretti?
No.
What a great book. It came out probably late 80s, early 90s, maybe. But it like the first 4 chapters are kind of slow going, but then this lady in the church is, dear old saint of the church, old lady prayer warrior. She starts going to prayer in the church, and because there's lots of stuff going bad in her town and whatnot. And then Frank Peretti, the author, peels back the veil and allows the reader to see what happens in the spirit realm when you pray. And he very articulately in very visual way, like as you're reading it, you can see the movie playing in your head, depicts the heavenly angels warring against the principalities and powers that are behind the scenes controlling the earthly agents that are doing what they're doing in the town. And from that point on, that was the first 300-400 page book that I read in one sitting. Just once I got paid after chapter 4, I was like, whoa, and I couldn't. I stayed up all night. I finished it, and then I got the audio book version of it. And Frank Peretti is a very animated person, so he does all the voices and changes his voice up and had his voice modulated for the demonic and fallen angel characters and stuff. So, if you don't want to read it, listening to it's very entertaining. But, I think that's the mode we're in right now. We're in that mode.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. And, like Jonah going and Nineveh changing their ways and praying, and even Josiah and taking down all the idols and the worship, the groves and the high places, and even in the testament of Job, how he destroyed, and being a king, went around and destroyed all the high places and the sanctuaries of Satan and those idols and all of that. And so we and certainly this nation needs to change, its heart, and it's because it's being corrupted from the top down, and certainly the so-called politicians, representatives, they are not catering to the will of the people, and so we should definitely pray to let the Most High know, where our heart is and where we stand and what we desire. Not what's being done in our name, but what we, should pray for. And so, I think that would be a really good thing. And, of course, on smaller levels, with the groups that we do come together with, we do this kind of thing. But certainly, if we were to, in mass numbers, I think the effect and the repercussions of praying like that are unforeseen, unimagined. And so, I think that's a really good thing to try to create catalysts for and to organize. And, again, it doesn't take a lot of effort. And it's something that could be done pretty easily, in my opinion.
The thought just occurred to me, because for a long time, and I still sometimes see it, but for a long time, I was seeing triple digits like 3, 4, 5 times a day. Like every time, I looked at the clock, it would be a triple digit. I look at a license plate in front of me. I look at the odometer of my car. Like everywhere I looked, I was seeing triple digits all the time. So it prompted me to like, what does this mean? And you see it once or twice, you think, okay, whatever. But it's like every day you start to really take notice of it. And so I did a study. This is quite a number of years ago now. I think I was still in the ministry at the time, so it might have been back in like 2008, maybe 9, on numbers and the meaning of the numbers. And one that stands out the most to me, so I'm just going to go ahead and declare it here now, is 444. And I remember the meaning of 444, at least according to the resources that I was finding at the time, was the meaning of 444 was God at work in the earth through his covenant people. So I'm just going to announce it here for my audience that let's do this at 444, and let's just say whatever your time zone is, because there's people listening.
I like that.
From all over the world. So so then literally for every hour, we have a worldwide audience. So, every hour it's going to turn 444 someplace, right?
Right.
So it would be a wave, a worldwide wave. Yeah, try to say that a few times, of prayer warriors getting down on their knees at 4:44 in the afternoon. So that's what I'm going to start doing it. And
I
I'm
like
just
it. I like
announce
it.
Here. Let's do this, guys. God at work in the
Let's
earth.
do
Just
it.
couple people 4:44 every day. Mark your calendar. Set a alarm clock or something on your watch or whatever on your phone to remind you. And like you said, it doesn't take long. Just you know,
4 minutes.
yeah. There you go. 4:44 for 4 minutes. I like it.
I like
awesome.
it as well. And I'm going to do it myself, and I'm going to ask everybody that's listening that comes into the archives, and all the people that we know that are part of the ministry outreach. We're going to ask them to do the same. And let's do it. Let's see what happens, what kind of effect, and let's let the Most High know where our heart is, because certainly, again, the representatives of this country are not representing the will of the people. All right, we'll be right back, everyone, for a second.
As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased, as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com.
We are stream narrative, it can feel like we are studying alone. So together with you, Sacred Word Publishing classes has begun. Are you interested in Biblical Hebrew, the Nochian calendar, extra biblical texts, or other esoteric topics? Join any class for free. Or do you have research you'd like to share with fellow truth seekers? We'd love to help you set up a class. As students, we also have an opportunity to be teachers, and whichever role you're settled into today, we'll be happy to study with you at swpclass.com. Email us at sacredwordpublishingllc@gmail.com with your class ideas, and we look forward to learning with you. See you in class!
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
Become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
Relevance to dig up our past time, my lapses, and with it are much of the facts. I'm imagining God's meaning alien class.
All right, welcome back everybody for a second hour, and we just want to remind people again, 4:44 p.m. wherever you may be in the world, if you could just sit down and settle, humble yourself before the Most High and pray for 4 minutes in whatever it is that may be upon your heart, even if you just do the Lord's Prayer. Whatever. But yeah, I think we should pray for each other, pray for our country, pray for our world, and pray against the spiritual wickedness in high places, the legion, the powers, principalities, and the Illuminati and all of the agenda of everything that they've been pushing and that's going on. The Georgia Guidestones, all of that. And so, Rob, I'll give you a chance to comment, and then we can move into the manuscripts.
Yeah. Well, just somebody said God doesn't, in the chat room, somebody's like, God doesn't need a specific time to hear our prayers. Of course not. But I believe that there is enormous power when people are united, you know, and praying with intent. And the enemy knows this. The enemy does this.
Right.
And they're doing it against us. So, I mean, we should be praying all day long, pray without ceasing, as they say. But I think that there's enormous power in mobilizing the saints to specifically war against what's happening. And as far as what to pray against, I mean, come on, just look around.
Exactly.
Pick a topic, right? There's so much of it right now, and really against the spiritual. We and I have to remind myself of this, that it's not against people, even though there are a number of people I could easily name right now, but there are principalities and powers and spiritual wickedness behind them. But yeah, I think we need to be intentional. I think we need to be specific, of course, if you want to do it for more than 4 minutes, great. The more the better.
Yes, of course. Right.
I would say
at
that's
least the 4,
a minimum, come on, can you at least, and most people would take a 4-minute break, if they're at work or whatever, if they have to. So yeah, I just think there's going to be enormous power behind that, and then we just watch what happens, because frankly, on the human side, I think the DOJ is gone. Like I have like very little hope in the judicial system right now. So hoping things will be resolved through the judicial system, at this point, I think it's completely gone.
I mean, just what we saw with the election selection process.
And
that confirmed all that.
I mean, what's going on with? Well, I don't know, I'm not going to get into it.
No accountability.
And you were talking about people being deplatformed and stuff. Did you see that Dr. Mercola is being forced to take down his entire website? 25 years.
What? Oh my gosh! Wow.
Yeah, he put out a video. I think it was this morning. 25 years worth of articles, videos, blogs, and stuff that he's been, helping people with a wide range of topics, being forced to. He's been targeted.
Yes, of course. Too much truth.
Crazy. Okay. Other than that, last week on my show, I finished with reading the King James version of Genesis 46. So if you wanted to read the Targum, I could queue up Joshua and Jubilees.
Okay, sounds good. Let me see if I can.
Pretty much 46, if I recall, last week was just mostly the names of the sons of Jacob and their children that went down. It was like And these are the people that went down from the house of, Reuben.
Uh-huh. Did it come up? Or are you able to see?
Yeah, that's Genesis 46. Yeah. Oh, you mean on yours?
Yeah.
Screen? Yeah, it did. Yep.
Okay, good. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Okay. 46 from the Targum. And Israel journeyed with all that he had and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. And the Lord spake to Israel in a prophecy of the night and said, Jacob, and he said, Behold me. And he said, I am God, the God of thy father. Fear not to go down into Mizraim on account of the servitude I have decreed with Abraham. For a great people will I make thee there. I am he who in my word will go down with thee into Mizraim. I will regard the affliction of thy children, and my word shall bring thee up from thence, and cause thy children to come up. But Joseph shall lay his hand upon thine eyes. And Jacob arose from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel journeyed with Jacob their father, their little ones, and their wives, in the wagons which Pharaoh had sent to carry him. They took their possessions and the substance which they had gotten in the land of Canaan, and came into Mizraim. Jacob and all his sons with him, his sons and his sons' children with him, his daughters and the daughters of his sons, and all his seed came with him to Mizraim. These are the names of the sons of Israel who came into Mizraim, Jacob and his sons. The firstborn of Jacob, Reuben, and the sons of Reuben, Hanok and Phalu, Hetzron and Carmi. The sons of Shimeon, Yamiel and Yamin, Ochad, Yakin, Sochar, and Shaul. He is Zimri, who made the work of the Canaanites in Shittim. And the sons of Levi, Gershon, Kehath, and Merari. The sons of Yehuda, Onan, Shelah, Pheretz, and Zerach. But and Onan died on account of their evil work in the land of Canaan. And Shelah and Zerach had no children in the land of Canaan. But the sons of Pheretz, who went down to Mizraim, were Hetzron and Shamuel. The sons of Issachar, sages and masters of reasoning. Their names were Tola, Phua, Job, and Shimron. The sons of Zebulun, merchants, masters of commerce, nourishing their brethren. The sons of Issachar, and receiving a reward like theirs. And their names were Sered, Elon, and Jalil. These are the sons of Leah, whom she bare unto Jacob in Padan Aram, with Dinah his daughter. All the souls of his sons and his daughter, 33. And the children of Gad, Siphon, Hagi, Suni, Esbon, Iri, Arodi, and Areli. The children of Asher, Yimnah, Yishva, Yishvi, Beriah, and Sirach, their sister, who was carried away while alive into the garden of Eden, because she had announced to Jacob that Joseph still lived. It was she who saved the inhabitants of the city of Abel from the judgment of death in the days of Joab. The sons of Beriah, who went down into Mizraim, were Eber and Malchiel. These are the children of Zilpah, whom Laban gave to Leah his daughter, and she bare them to Jacob. 16 souls. The sons of Rahel, wife of Jacob, Joseph and Benjamin, And to Joseph were born 2 sons in the land of Mizraim, whom Asenath, the daughter of Dinah, educated in the house of Potiphar, prince of Tanis, bare Manasseh and Ephraim. The sons of Benjamin 10, and their names according to the interpretation of Joseph, his brother, Bela, who was swallowed up from him, Becher, who was the chosen of his mother, Ashbal, who went into captivity, Gerah, who became a sojourner in a foreign land, Naaman, who was pleasant and honorable, Achi, who had a twin brother, the son of his mother, Rosh, who was a chief in his father's house, Mupim, who was sold into Muf, Shupim, because at the time that he was separated from him, he was the son of 18 years and was eligible for marriage. Shufa, Thalamus, Nuptialis, and Ered, who descended into Mizraim. These are the children of Rahel, who were born unto Jacob, all the souls 14. The sons of Dan, able men, or armed and merchants, of whose numbers there is no end or sum. And the sons of Naphtali, Jechzeel, Guni, Jetzer, and Shilem. These are the sons of Bilhah, whom Laban gave to Rahel, his daughter, and she bare them unto Jacob, all the souls 7. All the souls which went into Mizraim with Jacob, which had come forth from his thigh, besides the wives of Jacob's sons, all the souls were 66. But the sons of Joseph, who were born to him in Mizraim, were 2 souls, and Joseph, who was in Mizraim, and Jochebed, the daughter of Levi, who was born among the hills in their journey to Mizraim, the sum of all the souls of the house of Jacob, who came into Mizraim, 70. And he sent Yehuda before him to Joseph to indicate the way before him, to subdue the pillars of the earth, and to provide him a house of dwelling in Goshen. And they came to the land of Goshen, Jerusalem, to prepare him a place of habitation in Goshen. And Joseph made ready his chariot and went up to meet Israel his father in Goshen, and his father, before he recognized him, worshipped him, and thus became liable to be shortened or cut off in his years. And he wondered and beheld him, and fell upon his neck, and wept still upon his neck, because he had worshipped him. And Israel said to Joseph, if at this time I die, I am comforted. For with the death that the righteous die, shall I die, after seeing thy face, because thou art yet alive. And Joseph said to his brethren and his father's house, I will go up and tell Pharaoh, and say to him, my brethren and my father's house from the land of Canaan have come to me. The men are pastors of sheep, for they are men, the masters of flocks, and their sheep and oxen and all which they have brought. And it must be when Pharaoh calleth you, and saith, tell me, what is your work? You must say, thy servants have been masters of flocks from our youth until now, that you may dwell in the land of Goshen, because the Mizrahi reject all shepherds. Continuing. Did you want me to continue? Or stop there?
Yeah, I think that's probably, that looks
right.
like end right there. Something you were reading that caught my attention. I think it was the sons of Benjamin. Jerah, a sojourner in a foreign land. I wonder are you aware of anything that picks up on that story? Like, where did he go?
I'm not exactly sure, but from the story previous to this, when Benjamin came to meet his brother and realized that was his brother, he told him the story of how he named all his 10 children after the trials that Joseph had gone through. And so I'm thinking, that the naming of his 10 children are not per se what they went through, but what Joseph had gone through, and his being, a stranger in a strange land, a sojourner.
Mupin being sold into Moop.
Yes, all those were, the different levels and the different trials and the continuation of the story of Joseph through his children. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was gonna say because that'd be interesting if well, I mean, maybe that's why he named him, but maybe they ended up living out their names also.
Oh yeah, very well. That kind of thing happens.
Yeah,
especially with scripture.
Yeah. So wondering if the Gerard character may have went on to be a significant character, in Germany or someplace for for
right,
instance,
right, yeah,
legend out there somewhere.
Right.
Because I've seen stuff like that in the past. You start going down these rabbit trails, and you're like, "Whoa, that's cool!" Kind of like the Dinah issue,
Yes,
and
exactly.
Circle.
Right, and you see now. I mean, whereas it's not found in the King James, certainly it is very common knowledge in the extra biblical and the apocryphal texts.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I got Joshua 55 queued up. It looks like we left off in Jubilees 45, but 46 picks up after the death of Jacob. So we haven't got there yet in Genesis. So I think we'll keep a hold on Jubilees until we get to that point.
All right.
So basically, I guess we're at the point of them coming down to Egypt, and that was just the who's who that came down. If I'll read Joshua 55 and see where that takes us, and if it doesn't get too far ahead, then I'll read Genesis 47.
Okay, and I have the story of Jacob going down into Egypt from the Legends of the Jews. So.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you can do that after we do Joshua. Give your voice a break there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, the last two shows is like, okay, you got this show.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Joshua chapter 55. And it came to pass after this that Jacob said, I will go and see my son in Egypt, and will then come back to the land of Canaan, in which God had spoken unto Abraham, for I cannot leave the land of my birthplace. Behold, the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, Go down to Egypt with all thy household, and remain there. Fear not to go down to Egypt, for I will make thee a great nation. I'm going to pause there. When it comes to end times prophecy, and when I was doing my Yahuwah triangle research and that whole study right there, I kept finding a pattern. And the reason I call it the Yahuwah triangle is that if you can look at a map and take a pin and put it, I put on the Giza Plateau in Egypt, and in Jerusalem in Israel, and Babylon, Iraq. So those are the three pins on the map that when you connect them, you get the Yahuwah triangle. Is that many times I was seeing things being birthed in Egypt and going from Egypt to Israel. And I came to believe that Adam may have been created from the sands of the Giza Plateau, and I give my reasons for that. But regardless, out of Egypt I have called my son, right? So that was a prophetic utterance, and it referred to Israel is also referred to as God's son, but his only begotten son also went down to Egypt and then came forth, shortly after he was born. So some say within, the first 2 years or so, he probably right about the time he was born was taken down to Egypt to spare his life, and then was brought back. So you have this idea of sort of something being created or birthed in Egypt and then going from there to the land of Israel, and you're allowed to stay there until you violate God's commandments, and then you get booted out to Babylon, and you stay in Babylon till you learn your lesson, And if you learn your lesson, you get to go back from Babylon back to the land, the Holy Land. But if you, I believe the Leviticus 26 says, if you don't learn your lesson in chastisement, you get 7 times the judgment of whatever the initial judgment was. And if you look at the Northern Kingdom, they got 7 times the judgment, 2,790 years. Their initial judgment was, according to was Ezekiel 4, I think, 390 days the prophet was to lay on his side, a day representing a year. And so their initial punishment was 390 years, whereas the Southern Kingdom had 70 years. They repented and got to go back into the land. There's no indication the Northern Kingdom repented. That's why they got 7 times the judgment. But it says that, I forget what the reference, I think it might be in Hosea. It's been a while since I've looked at all that, but that they were going to have to go back to Egypt. So I'm of the opinion that when the greater Exodus occurs, kind of wanted to get your thought on this if you've had any thoughts on this, but I'm of the opinion that, when you look at Jeremiah 23, Jeremiah 30, Jeremiah 31, the entire book of Hosea, Ezekiel 37 through 40, Isaiah 65, 66, you see all of these descriptions where Yahuwah says, I'm going to do it. I'm going to regather you. And Jeremiah refers to it as a greater Exodus that, it's going to be so great that it's going to make the Exodus of Moses pale in comparison. And I believe the reason for that is because we're going to be pulled from all over the world. I mean, I don't know if they just split the Atlantic Ocean or what, but it's going to be a massive gathering, that will dwarf and make the one of it's going to make the one of Moses look like nothing, and that, if you look into the Exodus of Moses, that was massively, incredibly, like, wow, what happened? This is going to be even greater. So I'm of the opinion that we're probably going to go, because it says that we will be tried in the wilderness and have to pass under the rod, and see basically who's worthy to go into the land. Right. So I actually think we're going to be regathered in Africa, probably make our way through Egypt. And again, the son being called out of Egypt, we're going to be called from Egypt into the promised land about the time that he's ready to bring the New Jerusalem down.
That's very interesting.
I didn't know if you had any thoughts on any of that, but that's kind of where I'm at with that. And because, that's where he made them a great nation. He didn't make them a nation in Canaan. He made them a nation.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I've never considered that, but I find that biblically the theme of what happened in the past always seems to have a repeat. And especially in the end times, I think that there will be connection, like the Garden, Revelation, Eden, and Armageddon, all those kind of things. And so, it would not surprise me at all. And, just when you were speaking about that, I had thought of how, because, Egypt is the idols and a land set up by the fallen angels, and how even when Christ went there in infancy, they were, cast forth from some of these places because the idols would bow down to him and would fall and be broken asunder.
Wow.
And and I could see how that, the Most High Yahuwah is showing his superiority and that kind of thing, even repeating, being gathered there and then led into the Holy Land. How there it could be even a connection of, that, because we have the earthquake as well with the return of Christ and all the cities and, everything collapsing and being destroyed. I could see how Egypt could be turned to dust, the idols fall, and, a lot of those cities set up by the fallen angels and megalithic cyclopean architecture could bow down to his majesty, and then those that are worthy being led into the sanctuary of New Jerusalem for the seventh day of rest. So I could totally see something like that. And again, it chronicles his majesty in the same manner that in the Exodus, Yahuwah leading his people through Moshe out of the bondage of Israel, which at that time was, Egypt was the greatest nation in the world. And certainly during the time of Joseph, they came to own great wealth, and that people had to give of even the wealth that they had in order to purchase the corn that was so greatly abundant in Egypt, but that was found nowhere else in the world. And, you can't eat gold or even property or, whatever. And so people were giving up tremendous wealth. And this is also found in some of the other stories about, oh, wow, that was quick. All right. We'll be right back for a second hour.
As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased, as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com. Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures.
Hello, friends. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
All right, welcome back, everybody, for second hour. Certainly, this show is going by super quick as per usual. But I did want to make one other point really quickly with regard to the idols bound down to Yahushua, even when he was a 2-year-old child visiting in Egypt. That in the same manner that this occurred, we had during the time of the trial when he went before Pontius Pilate, the Roman soldiers that were holding the banners all bent and humbled themselves before Christ as he entered into the trial hall for persecution. And the Jews, the Pharisees, they were very angry at this, and so Pontius asked the soldiers, the Roman legionnaires, why they bowed the banners to Christ in homage to him, and they said they did no such thing. They did not recognize him as any kind of king or authority, but the banners themselves bent in homage before him. And so when he went and reported that to the Pharisees, they didn't believe it, and so they put their own people, all of them gathered the banners and held them. And the same thing occurred when Christ came into the hall. The banners all bowed in homage before him. And so, even the inanimate objects of the world recognize the authority of the Son of God and humble and bow themselves before him. And so even the rocks and everything recognize and speak out as to his majesty and his authority, in the same way that Legion also recognized him as their tormentor, and that had asked him if he had come before the time.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. That's in the Gospel of Nicodemus as well.
Oh, nice.
That story.
During the break, I did a quick search because people were asking, what's the significance of 444? Where did you get that? I'd have to go back and look and find all the research I did back then. It's been a long time since I looked at it, but it was kind of a fun study of just looking at, chapter 4, verse 44, if there was, some chapter 4s don't go that high. So I just did like biblical searches for combinations like chapter 44, verse 4. And each book, any books that had the 44 or a chapter 4 with the 44th verse, it was doing combinations like that. And then finding other resources. There's one I just posted in the link in the chat room. It's a fairly long page, so I'm not going to go through all this here, but just the first couple of paragraphs says, according to the book of the appointed times of Jesus the Messiah, there exists an interesting relationship between the meaning of the number 444 and Christ's earthly ministry. As our biblical timeline of Jesus' life shows, I guess there's a link to something, his ministry began on September 11th in 26 AD, the same day the devil began his 40 days of temptation. This day fell on a Wednesday, the 4th day of the week. September 11th was not only the Day of Atonement in 26, it was the start of the Jubilee year, and it gives scripture references there. Oh. In Jesus' first recorded public address in Nazareth, he links his ministry and message to this special period of liberty and freedom, which occurred every 50th year and was announced on Atonement, Leviticus 25. Anyway, it goes on, and I haven't vetted this site, so I can't vouch for their meanings of numbers here. But just from the first couple paragraphs that I read there, or first few sentences, it looks like they're tracking along similar lines to what I had found. But whatever resource it was that I was looking at had come to the conclusion that the meaning of 444 was essentially God at work in the earth through his covenant people. So for people who are wondering where I got that.
Right on.
And just, to clarify, it's 4:44 p.m. in whatever your time zone is, wherever you are in the world. So the idea would be that we create a a spiritual prayer flood, a wave that washes around the world every day. From wherever the first time it occurs at 444 all the way to the last time it occurs at 444 every day. We just send, for a minimum of 4 minutes, we'll just prayer bomb.
Yes.
So that'd be pretty cool.
Awesome. Very cool.
Okay, let me switch back over here. So he's going to make a great nation of them there in Egypt, is where I left off in chapter 55 of Joshua. Picking up verse 3. And Jacob said within himself, I will go and see my son whether the fear of God is yet in his heart amidst all the inhabitants of Egypt. And the Lord said unto Jacob, fear not about Joseph, for he still retaineth his integrity to serve me, as will seem good in thy sight. And Jacob rejoiced exceedingly concerning his son. At that time Jacob commanded his sons and household to go to Egypt according to the word of the Lord unto him. And Jacob rose up with his sons and all his household, and he went out from the land of Canaan from Beersheba with joy and gladness of heart. And they went to the land of Egypt. And it came to pass, when they came near Egypt, Jacob sent Judah before him to Joseph, that he might show him a situation in Egypt. And Judah did according to the word of his father. And he hastened and ran and came to Joseph. And they assigned for them a place in the land of Goshen for all his household. And Judah returned and came along the road to his father. And Joseph harnessed the chariot, and he assembled all his mighty men and his servants and all the officers of Egypt in order to go and meet his father Jacob. And Joseph's mandate was proclaimed in Egypt, saying, all that do not go to meet Jacob shall die. Wow. And the next day Joseph went forth with all Egypt, a great and mighty host, all dressed in garments of fine linen and purple, and with instruments of silver and gold, and with their instruments of war with them. And they all went to meet Jacob with all sorts of musical instruments, with drums and timbrels, strewing myrrh and aloes all along the road. And they all went after this fashion, and the earth shook at their shouting. And all the women of Egypt went upon the roofs of Egypt and upon the walls to meet Jacob. And upon the head of Joseph was Pharaoh's regal crown, for Pharaoh had sent it unto him to put on at the time of his going to meet his father. And when Joseph came within 50 cubits of his father, he alighted from the chariot, and he walked toward his father. And when all the officers of Egypt and their nobles saw that Joseph had gone on foot toward his father, they also alighted and walked on foot toward Jacob. And when Jacob approached the camp of Joseph, Jacob observed the camp that was coming toward him with Joseph, and it gratified him, and Jacob was astonished at it. And Jacob said unto Judah, who is that man whom I see in the camp of Egypt, dressed in kingly robes, with a very red garment upon him, and a royal crown upon his head, who has alighted from his chariot and is coming toward us? And Judah answered his father, saying, he is thy son Joseph, the king. And Jacob rejoiced in seeing the glory of his son. Man, you can imagine what he was feeling at that moment.
Oh, pride, yeah.
Wow. I mean, all that glittering in the sun.
Right.
Had to have been, what a sight that must have been.
Yeah. And I'm sure that he remembered the prophecy too,
Yeah, right. Something I wanted to mention before I forget it. Chad Schaefer, Chad, right? Chad Schaefer.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
He co-authored, I think he was the primary author. I think Doug Krieger piped in and helped with some of it, but he wrote a book, The World and the Bondage of Egypt. And, we I think rightly in some ways assume that we're in Babylon, come out of Babylon, might be, right? But Chad makes a compelling case that we're actually in Egypt. And, I would say they're kind of blended at this point, I think there's validity to both. But he makes an interesting case that, the world is held in the bondage of Egypt. And if you think in terms of what's happening in the world right now with regard to secret societies and the Illuminati and, clandestine secret societies in the background pulling the strings and that sort of stuff, that's all based on Egyptian lore, myths of Osiris type stuff.
Yeah, and, even the Eye of Ra.
Yeah, in the back of your dollar bill and all that, right?
Right.
So it's interesting. That was just popping into my head with regard to the Greater Exodus.
Yeah,
and coming all that. Okay. Verse 14. And Joseph came nigh unto his father, and he bowed to his father, and all the men of the camp bowed to the ground with him before Jacob. And behold, Jacob ran and hastened to his son Joseph, and fell upon his neck and kissed him. And they wept, and Joseph also embraced his father and kissed him. And they wept, and all the people of Egypt wept with them. And Jacob said unto Joseph, Now I will die cheerfully after I have seen thy face, and thou art still living and with glory. And the sons of Jacob and their wives and their children and their servants and all the household of Jacob wept exceedingly with Joseph, and they kissed him and wept greatly with him. And Joseph and all his people returned afterward home to Egypt. And Jacob and his sons and all the children of his household came with Joseph to Egypt. And Joseph placed them in the best part of Egypt in the land of Goshen. And Joseph said unto his father and unto his brethren, I will go up and tell Pharaoh, saying, My brethren and my father's household and all belonging to them have come unto me, and behold, they are in the land of Goshen. And Joseph did so, and took from his brethren Reuben, Issachar, Zebulun, and his brother Benjamin, and he placed them before Pharaoh. And Joseph spoke unto Pharaoh, saying, My brethren and my father's household, and all belonging to him, together with their flocks and cattle, have come unto me from the land of Canaan to sojourn in Egypt, for the famine was sore upon them. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, Place thy father and brethren in the best part of the land, withhold not from them all that is good, and cause them to eat of the fat of the land. And Joseph answered, saying, Behold, I have stationed them in the land of Goshen, for they are shepherds. Therefore let them remain in Goshen to feed their flocks apart from the Egyptians. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, Do with thy brethren all that they say unto thee. And the sons of Jacob bowed down to Pharaoh, and they went forth from him in peace. And Joseph afterward brought his father before Pharaoh. And Jacob came and bowed down to Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. And he then went out, and Jacob and all his sons and all his household dwelt in the land of Goshen. In the second year, that is, in the 130th year of the life of Jacob, Joseph maintained his father and his brethren and all his father's household with bread according to their little ones all the days of the famine. They lacked nothing. And Joseph gave unto them the best part of the whole land, the best of Egypt, and they all the days of Joseph. And Joseph also gave them and unto the whole of his father's household clothes and garments year by year. And the sons of Jacob remained securely in Egypt all the days of their brother. And Jacob always ate at Joseph's table. Jacob and his sons did not leave Joseph's table day or night, besides what Jacob's children consumed in their houses. And all Egypt ate bread during the days of the famine from the house of Joseph, for all the Egyptians sold all belonging to them on account of the famine. And Joseph purchased all the lands and fields of Egypt for bread on account of Pharaoh. And Joseph supplied all Egypt with bread all the days of the famine. And Joseph collected all the silver and gold that came unto him for the corn which they bought throughout the land, and he accumulated much gold and silver, besides an immense quantity of onyx stones, bdellium, and valuable garments, which they brought unto Joseph from every part of the land when their money was spent. And Joseph took all the silver and gold that came into his hand, about 22 talents of gold and silver, and also onyx stones and bdellium, and in great abundance. And Joseph went and concealed them in 4 parts. And he concealed one part in the wilderness near the Red Sea, and one part by the river Perath, and the third and fourth part he concealed in the desert opposite to the wilderness of Persia and Media. I wonder if that's still out there.
Right.
Like I've never noticed this before. Like, this is treasure hunt time kind of thing,
Right. Yeah, that's what I was talking about, how he had gathered all the wealth, in just selling corn, and they gave up everything, all their gold, their jewelry, their plots of land, just to survive.
Yeah. Somebody in the chat room just thank you, by the way, for super chats. Somebody in the chat room said, would you guys ever be open to have a more relaxed live stream where you don't have a particular subject to touch on, but rather chat and discuss current events or news and other various topics? You guys have such wisdom. Yeah, thank you. Well, we kind of do that. At the beginning, first, and people always, I thought we were talking about Genesis. Why are you guys talking about
right?
It's like you can't win or lose.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it'd be fun if we did like Ask Me Anything. I know you do those shows all the time, but maybe if we
Right,
did
right.
something like that together. Because we're
Yeah,
almost done
maybe.
with Genesis, you know.
Right. Yeah, we should do that like even once a month. Uh, or take questions from
Yeah,
all the listening audience and give everybody a chance to ask us whatever they want, and yeah, do a show where we just answer questions for people. That would be cool.
yeah, that'd be fun. So we're almost what is there 52, 53, something like that. I forget how many chapters there are in Genesis. So we're almost done with Genesis, and
Uh-huh.
maybe once we
After
finish
that,
take a break and do some other things and
yeah, that sounds good.
figure out what we want to do after that, if anything.
Right. Sounds good.
Cool. Verse 32. And he took part of the gold and silver that was left and gave it unto his brothers and unto all his father's household and unto all the women of his father's household. And the rest he brought to the house of Pharaoh, about 20 talents of gold and silver. And Joseph gave all the gold and silver that was left unto Pharaoh, and Pharaoh placed it in the treasury. And the days of the famine ceased after that in the land, and they sowed and reaped in the whole land, and they obtained their usual quantity year by year, lacking nothing. And Joseph dwelt securely in Egypt, and the whole land was under his advice. And his father and his brethren dwelt in the land of Goshen and took possession of it. And Joseph was very aged, advanced in days, and his sons Ephraim and Manasseh remained constantly in the house of Jacob, together with the children of the sons of Jacob, their brethren, to learn the ways of the Lord and his law. And Jacob and his sons dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the land of Goshen, and they took possession in it, and they were fruitful and multiplied in it. That's probably a good place to stop there, because he's probably going to get into, as they're getting older here, is probably going to get into the blessing where Jacob, before he dies, he
Right.
blesses
Right.
Ephraim and Manasseh. So that's
Yeah.
Genesis 48. So that's 2 chapters away in Genesis. So maybe that's a good place to stop there. And Joshua, if you wanted to read the Legends of the Jews.
Yeah, Legends of the Jews. Okay, let me share this. Here we go. All right. Then Jacob and the members of his family put on the clothes Joseph had sent, among them a turban for Jacob, and they made all preparations to journey down into Egypt and dwell there with Joseph and his family. Hearing of his good fortune, the kings and the grandees of Canaan came to wait upon Jacob and express sympathy with him in his joy, and he prepared a 3 days banquet for them. Jacob, however, would not go down into Egypt without first inquiring whether it was the will of God that he should leave the Holy Land. He said, "How can I leave the land of my fathers, the land of my birth, the land in which the Shekinah dwells, and go into an unclean land, inhabited by slaves of the sons of Ham, a land wherein there is no fear of God?" Then he brought sacrifices in honor of God, in the expectation that a divine vision would descend upon him and instruct him whether to go down into Egypt or have Joseph come up to Canaan. He feared the sojourn in Egypt, for he remembered the vision he had at Bethel on leaving his father's house. And he said to God, "I resemble my father, as he was greedy in fulfilling his maw. So am I, and therefore I would go down into Egypt in consequence of the famine. As my father preferred one son to the other, so had I a favorite son, and therefore I would go down into Egypt to see Joseph. But in this I do not resemble my father. He had only himself to provide for, and my house consists of 70 souls. And therefore am I compelled to go down into Egypt. The blessing which my father gave me was not fulfilled in me, but in my son Joseph, whom people serve. And before whom nations bow down. Then the Shekinah addressed Jacob, calling his name twice in token of love, and bidding him not to fear the Egyptian slavery, foretold for the descendants of Abraham, for God would have pity upon the suffering of his children and deliver them from bondage. God furthermore said, I will go down into Egypt with thee. And the Shekinah accompanied Jacob thither, bringing the number of the company with which he entered Egypt up to 70. But as Jacob entertained fears that his descendants would stay there forever, God gave him the assurance that he would lead him forth together with all the pious that were like unto him. And God also told Jacob that Joseph had remained steadfast in his piety, even in Egypt, and he might dismiss all doubts from his mind on this score. For it was his anxiety on this account that had induced Jacob to consider going down into Egypt. He wanted only to make sure of Joseph's faithfulness and then return home. But God commanded him to go thither and remain there. Before Jacob left Canaan, he went to Beersheba to hew down the cedars that Abraham had planted there and take them with him to Egypt. For centuries, these cedar trees remained in the possession of his descendants. They carried them with them when they left Egypt, and they used them in building the tabernacle.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah, very interesting. Although Joseph had put wagons at the disposal of his brethren for the removal of his family from Canaan to Egypt, they yet carried Jacob upon their arms, for which purpose they divided themselves into 3 divisions, one division after the other, assuming the burden. As a reward for their filial devotion, God redeemed their descendants from Egypt. Judah was sent on ahead by his father to erect a dwelling in Goshen, and also a Bet Ha Midrash, that Jacob might set about instructing his sons at once after his arrival. He charged Judah with this honorable task in order to compensate him for a wrong he had done him. All the years of Joseph's absence, he had suspected Judah of having made away with Rachel's son. How little the suspicion was justified, he realized now, when Judah in particular had been assiduous in securing the safety of Benjamin, the other son of Rachel. Jacob therefore said to Judah, Thou hast done a pious, God-bidden deed, and hast shown thyself to be a man capable of carrying on negotiations with Joseph. Complete the work thou hast begun. Go to Goshen, and together with Joseph prepare all things for our coming indeed. Continued Jacob, Thou wast the cause of our going down into Egypt, for it was at thy suggestion that Joseph was sold as a slave, and also through thy descendant Israel will be led forth out of Egypt. When Joseph was informed of the approach of his father, he rejoiced exceedingly, chiefly because his coming would stop the talk of the Egyptians, who were constantly referring to him as the slave that had dominion over them. Now, thought Joseph, they will see my father and my brethren, and they will be convinced that I am a freeborn man of noble stock. In his joy and anticipation of seeing his father, Joseph made ready his chariot with his own hands, without waiting for his servants to minister to him. And this loving action redounded later to the benefit of the Israelites, for it rendered of none effect Pharaoh's zeal in making ready his chariot himself with his own hands to pursue after the Israelites. when the Egyptian nobles observed their viceroy completing his preparations to meet his father, they did the same. Indeed, Joseph had issued a proclamation throughout the land, threatening with death all that did not go forth to meet Jacob. The procession that accompanied him was composed of countless men, arrayed in byssus and purple, and marching to the sound of all sorts of musical instruments. Even the women of Egypt had a part in the reception ceremonies. They ascended to the roofs of the houses and the walls of the cities, ready to greet Jacob with the music of cymbals and timbrels. Joseph wore the royal crown upon his head. Pharaoh had yielded it to him.
Wow.
Okay, we'll pick it up on the other side, final segment.
As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com. Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses?
Which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible.
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Check out swpcalendar.com to see when to join us next for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together.
All right, welcome back, everybody, for a final segment. Yeah, the show is flying by, and I've got just a little bit more here to read, and then I'll turn it over to you, Rob. All right. When Jacob caught sight of the approaching procession, he was rejoiced, and even before he recognized Joseph, he bowed down before him. But for permitting his father to show him this mark of honor, punishment was visited upon Joseph. He died an untimely death before the years of his life assigned to him had elapsed. That no harm befell Jacob from a too sudden meeting with him, Joseph sent his oldest son ahead with 5 horses, the second son following close after him in the same way. As each son approached, Jacob thought he beheld Joseph, and so he was prepared gradually to see him face to face. Meantime, Jacob had espied from where he was seated a man in royal robes among the Egyptians, a crown upon his head, and a purple mantle over his shoulders. And he asked Judah who it might be. And when he was told that it was Joseph, his joy was great over the high dignity attained by his son. By this time, Joseph had come close to his father, and he bowed himself before him down to the earth, and all the people with him likewise prostrated themselves. Then Joseph fell upon his father's neck, and he wept bitterly. He was particularly grieved that he had permitted his father to bow down before him, but a little while before without hindering it. At the very moment when Joseph embraced his father, Jacob was reciting the Shema, and he did not allow himself to be interrupted in his prayer. But then he said, "When they brought me the report of the death of Joseph, I thought I was doomed to double death, that I should lose this world and the world to come as well. The Lord had promised to make me the ancestor of 12 tribes, and as the death of my son rendered it impossible that this promise should be realized, I feared it had incurred the doom by my own sins, and as a sinner, I could not but expect to forfeit the future world too. But now that I have beheld thee alive, I know that my death will be only for the world here below." Such was the manner of Jacob's arrival in Egypt. He came with his whole family. 69 persons they were in all, but the number was raised to 70 by the birth of Jochebed, afterward the mother of Moshe, which took place when the cavalcade had advanced to the space between the one and the other city wall. And the males in his family were married men, even Palu and Hezron, the latter of whom was but 1 year old at the time of their migration, and the former but 2 years, had the wives with them that had been chosen for them by their parents. In general, all the sons and grandsons of Jacob had married young. Some of them had been fathers at the age of 7. Wow, that's crazy. Joseph took
7. Wow.
Yeah, that seems.
Well, I mean, but we've talked about that before, though. That,
yeah.
You know,
They started young.
it's a lot different than Western society. Okay?
Right. And they still lived a little bit longer than we do now. But Joseph took some from among his brethren and presented them to Pharaoh. He chose the weakest of them that the king might not be tempted to retain them in his service as warriors. And as he did not desire his family to live at close quarters with the Egyptians and perhaps amalgamate with them, he introduced them as shepherds. The Egyptians worshipped the constellation of the ram and paid divine honors to animals, and they kept aloof from shepherds. Pharaoh therefore was inclined to grant Joseph's wish to give them the pasture land of Goshen for their sojourning place, the land that was theirs by right. For the Pharaoh that took Sarah away from Abraham by force had given it to her as her irrevocable possession.
Huh. I don't remember that. That's interesting. So that was a sort of a consolation for
Yeah.
he had given.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly that he gave, her the land of Goshen, but I do remember that he gave her many gifts and presents. Because they were restored from their deficiency.
They were having a bad day.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
So so that was already, that's interesting. So
that is interesting.
Already sort of had a claim.
A claim, yeah. Yeah.
Just you had said something earlier about how, in reference to like declaring the end from the beginning, that the things that happen in the beginning are going to have a repeat. And Judd and I were talking about this too on the show that we did yesterday, that and you read books like The Hero's Journey or Save the Cat. These are like go-to books for writers, script writers and novelists and whatnot, and they talk about good script writing and structure, story structure and stuff like that, and how you set things up with foreshadowing in the beginning that has a payoff later. In other words, like for your main character to do whatever he does at the climax of the film, you have to set it up in the beginning of the film that he has some understanding of it,
right,
some aptitude for it, that maybe he learns along the way leading up to it, but you have to set up stuff in the beginning for the payoff afterwards. And Judd and I were talking like, man, I mean, if that's the same formula and it seems to bear out, what has been will be again, there's nothing new under the sun, he's declared the end from the beginning. We have all these hints in scripture that he is following that plan. That I mean, when Yeshua said in Matthew 24, the last days would be likened unto the days of Noah, after people who disagree with what you and I believe about Noah's days, they'll say, no, it just means, business as usual, eating and drinking and giving marriage and, being given in marriage. And I'm like, so God's going to destroy the whole world for doing what he created us to do, eat and drink.
Yeah, right.
This somehow makes sense to you, right? Really? And if you say, well, it's meant to imply, well, life is just business as usual, and then all of a sudden he takes everybody by surprise. I'm like, well, you have to define what business as usual was in the days of Noah. Like you have to contend with, why did he pick? I mean, there's always been wars and rumors of wars and famines and earthquakes and all the other signs have been always. Of course, they're going to happen in increasing measure in the last days. But he specifically makes a point of saying that the last days would be like the days of Noah. So you have to say, well, what differentiates the days of Noah from any other time in human history? And
exactly, very important.
You have to recognize that the days of Noah weren't just the year that he spent in the ark.
Yes.
He had 300 or 949 other years. He lived 900 years. So 600 years before the flood, a year of the flood,
right,
and 349 years afterwards. That and there's a lot of crazy, weird, and wild, wacky stuff going on both sides of the flood in those time periods. So if all of that's if we are in fact in the last days, then expect a crazy ramp up of like beyond belief weirdness and crazy. If you think it's bad now, I mean, he talks about, Yeshua says that men's hearts will fail them for fear after the things they see coming upon the earth. That when Esdras talks about in the last days pregnant women will give birth to monsters, and Isaiah talks about speak to the gate, you rulers, and giants are coming to fulfill his wrath, and the Joel 2 army and the bottomless pit opening up, and fearful signs in the heavens. But why do you think disclosure and all that is ramping up? I mean, hang on, guys. Like, get ready.
Exactly. Yeah, very well said. And yeah, I do agree with you that the disclosure and the whole foundation, even biblical cosmology, coming to the forefront in this time is, I believe, the stage for what is the strong delusion and the foundation for even the whole ancient alien theory and the rise to popularity of the Sumerian mythology. The ancient aliens created us and left, and they're coming to save us again. All that is part of strong delusion and the set up for the coming of the Antichrist. Which that's going to be one of your talks at the conference. That's also what I spoke about at in my presentation to Take on the World last year. The definitely disclosure and what's been happening with the Navy and how they've all brought that to the forefront, and even the pilots are being allowed to speak about it in serious tone and manner. There's congressional meetings on all that stuff. So this is all coming full circle, and this is the same kind of thing. We had the fallen angels during the time of Yard coming down, descending, mating with the daughters of Cain, creating a race of giants. There was the miscegenation, the corruption of the genome DNA of animals, plants, and humanity, the wars between the giants, the presence of the giants here and after the flood. So a lot of spiritual and even physical weirdness coming to the forefront. And we're living in those times. I do believe, without a doubt, that we're seeing that kind of unfolding even now.
Well, along those lines, because especially for those of us who grew up in a pre-trib rapture mindset, who thought, well, I'm not going to have to deal with that. I'm getting out of here.
Right.
Of course, you come out of that mindset and you're like, wait a minute, I'm going to be here for all that. That's
right.
It's pretty scary. But I've been talking with a number of people lately, and there's been a lot of people are feeling sort of the same way. I want to get your take on it. That he talks about the wheat and tares go up together, right? They grow up together.
Right.
So such that they're gonna, if you will, get to the same height. Right now it feels like the tares are dwarfing the wheat. The tares are growing really tall right now and subduing the wheat. Mm-hmm. But if that's true, then the wheat's gonna sprout too. Like, L.A. Marzulli refers to the concept of a cosmic chess match of move and counter move. God makes a move, the devil makes a counter move, or the devil makes a move and God makes a counter move. That the revealing of the sons of God, that the earth and everything's travailing and waiting for, that there has to be, if evil is ramping up the way it is, then the good have to be getting ready to ramp up also to stand against it. Yes, there are a whole lot of the good that get martyred. We see that clearly in the book of Revelation, but there's also the remnant, and the specific attributes of the remnant that are not touched by the devil are those who have the testimony of Jesus Christ and keep the commandments of God.
Right.
And growing up in the Baptist upbringing and stuff like that, we certainly had the testimony of Jesus Christ, Yeshua, but there wasn't a whole lot of other than they would preach about the 10 Commandments minus one, the fourth one.
Exactly.
Wouldn't do the feasts, and did the beast feasts and stuff like that. So, but at the same time, and I've been talking with Jim Staley about this offline quite a bit also, and a few others, we still understood and had a concept of the gifts of the Spirit and walking in them, and signs, wonders, and exploits, and healing the sick and casting out demons and all that kind of stuff that is sorely missing in the Torah community.
Right.
Torah community is all like their heads in the book, and I get it that this, for many of us, this is all new, the understanding that we've been gaining from the Torah because we'd never spent any time there. We're always reading the back of the book, for in my case over 40 years in the back of the book, with just giving a nod every now and then to a story here and there in the Old Testament, but not really paying much attention to the foundation, which is such an odd mindset, right? Like, who would go to Barnes & Noble, buy the greatest best-selling novel of all time, skip 3/4 of the book, and start reading in the end of it and thinking you have a clue? Like, who would do that in real life? But that's what Christians do. But
exactly.
We're moving into a phase in the Virtual House Church. We're going to be wrapping up this Torah cycle, beginning in the book of Deuteronomy this weekend. But I'm making changes as we get ready to go into the next cycle that I don't know exactly how we're going to do it or what the format's going to be, but I really want to get to the point where we're merging our understanding of the Word of God with the gifts of the Spirit, with Torah, like all of it. I think in
Yes.
order for the sons of God to truly manifest to what we need to be, we need to have all of that. And
Right.
that's the group that the devil's not able to get. He goes after them, but in
Yes.
sons of flood, but the earth swallows it up, and he's not able to get to them. And if you don't fit the description of having both the testimony of Jesus Christ and keeping the commandments of God, then you're not in that group. You're going to be in the foolish virgin group that unfortunately is going to get locked out. So
Yes.
my whole thing is to equip myself and to try to equip others to get in the wise virgin camp.
Yes. Absolutely. And I think, again, part of the work of what we are doing is making people recognize that and that capacity. Because even with what we called for today, with the 4 minutes of prayer every 4:44 p.m., prayer is such a powerful tool, and it's something that's freely available, and it's something that we can utilize at any moment. And I also believe that prayer is something that, even though we can do it, it's something that we come to be, that we're living prayer, and that it's a state of mind that once you achieve that recognition where you understand that your intent, your thoughts have the power of manifestation, and that with the co-creative aspect of our being created in the image of God, that with that recognition and empowering others to also come to such acknowledgement, that we can't measure that potential or the consequences of us coming together in union, even if it's for that 4 minutes of that day, as the groups that decide to join in union, the amount of prayers rising up to the throne room of God, and the appeal, the things that we're calling for, the things that we're, and just even the gratitude, just the acknowledgement, the thanksgiving, the gratitude to the Most High for all the blessings and the bounty that He pours upon us. And even in just doing the Lord's Prayer, in asking for forgiveness and repentance, and also doing that to the others that have trespassed against us. I mean, forgiveness, that's a very powerful thing as well, because one thing in the world, and I think a lot of people, have been challenged with some of the pettiness that they have harbored in their hearts, that have allowed them to separate from their loved ones, and that have kept them apart. There's people that haven't spoken to their loved ones in years, just because of an argument that they don't even remember what the source and origin of it was, but yet they still feel and hold on to whatever hatred, whatever it is in the heart that keeps that division alive. And it's unfortunate, but again, we're being challenged to reconsider our priorities and our mindset and our perspective, as to what is real. And if this were our last year of life, or our last day, or last moments, would you really want to be where you are and act the way you are, and hold on to the things that you're holding on to, that have kept you silent from speaking to, some of your loved ones, whether that be a cousin, mother, brother, father, whoever. And I think not. I think that recognizing that we're not promised any more tomorrows, and that this, with the challenge of what's going on in the world, these could be our last days. This could be our last moment. That we have to recognize that, and also change, the way we are, and embrace a way of being that is more forgiving and loving and kind, and even unto our enemies, in the way that we are instructed within the commandments and within the scriptures to be. And so that's a challenge, that a lot of Christians are those that do as I say, not as I do, or aren't really living that prayer and aren't an example. Because I think even church is not somewhere where you go, but a state of mind that you come to hold and come to example and be. So, yeah, I think with what we're calling for and the shows that we do and helping others to acknowledge and recognize this within themselves, that goes a long ways into a spiritual warfare arena that we can't really even understand and fathom. And so I think it's going to be a positive and beneficial thing.
Well, but that's something we as believers really need a lot of work on, is the unity factor.
Yes.
You and I have said it many times, and one of the reasons why we get along so well is we both agree on this, is that, look, eternity is a long time to be wrong. So what do we need to get right to have eternal, fellowship with the Creator? Well, we need to agree that Yeshua is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through Him, and that it is a free gift by grace through faith, and not of works, lest any man should boast. If we can agree on that, that's all that matters. Like nothing else. We could be wrong about everything else we believe, but it's not going to affect our eternal destination. That will affect our eternal destination. So if this is the divide and conquer, right? Well, we're up to 40-something thousand denominations now of Christianity, and even within those denominations are splits. Within the splits of the denominations, you have people that are splitting, amongst themselves.
Right.
And what I'm constantly frustrated by and impressed with and frustrated by at the same time is every single time I finish watching a movie that I enjoy, or a TV show or something, I watch all the names that go by at the end, and I say to myself, somehow all these people managed to get together in unity and make this thing happen, whatever the video is, right? And I'm sure they didn't all agree. I mean, some of these blockbuster movies, the credits go on forever. It's like there are thousands of names going by, and somehow they all managed to come together for a common vision that they wanted to work and see manifest, and they did it despite their differences. That's where Christians are failing, because as soon as you say something I don't agree with, oh, you're a heretic, and then I'm going to blacklist you and ban you from my channel, and come on, people, that divide and conquer, that is how the devil has gotten so good at making us completely irrelevant culturally, and defeated, spiritually, such that we are not a threat to him. That's why I'm saying, guys, if nothing else, don't argue about what 444 means or whatever. That's just, look, I pulled that out and said, hey, this is something I remember. It's just an arbitrary number that has a meaning from my past. But we got to start somewhere. So why not then, right? I mean, why not? So if we could at least say, hey, at 4:44 p.m. every day for at least 4 minutes, we are going to get on our knees, repent before our own sins, and then call down fire from heaven against the evil that is happening. And whatever is planned for August 11th, it can be reverted, or what's the word? We can stop it. The words are escaping me at the moment, but we could come against it, and the plans of the enemies will be turned against themselves. I mean, how many times do we see in the accounts that we've been reading where the enemy camp is, confusion in the enemy camp, they start going off on each other, and that's when an angel's not coming down and wiping them all out at one time. So that's the kind of thing, the kind of power that we have at our disposal if we are willing to just put our differences aside and unite and say, hey, listen, we are all in this together. Whether you agree with me on pick a topic or not, the fact is most of us are under assault by the world system, and certainly by the ruler of this world is out to get us. So at least we have that in common. So look, we've got to unite to come against it.
Yes, agreed. And I remember the story of even Jacob and Esau when Jacob was going down to see his brother, and they were coming out to organize to murder him and to slaughter all his people, and how the angels gathered, I mean, the armies, the legions of the angelic forces that came up in support of Jacob that he didn't even, realize. And so that's the kind of potential that is there. And remember, just even one angel, the angel of the Lord, Yahushua, slaughtering all the armies of Sennacherib, it's powerful. All right, brother, another good show.
All right, man. See you next week.
All right, God bless all. Good night.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this video and this broadcast. We appreciate all of you, and thank you for your patronage. Please do like and subscribe and share with your friends. God bless all of you in your seeking.